wanted to talk about a few things that you should know before you start therapy. The first thing is confidentiality. So you can think of confidentiality as a one-way secret between you and the therapist. So anything that you say to the therapist will be confidential. The therapist cannot tell anyone else. Um, you can tell people what the therapist has said to you. If you want to talk to people about what you learned in therapy, you are allowed to do that. However, the therapist is not allowed to tell anyone else what you are discussing in therapy with them. So everything is confidential. There are, however, limits to confidentiality. The first limit to confidentiality is in the case of child abuse. So anything reported to a therapist that would be considered child abuse, the therapist is required by law to report. So therapists are required by law to report any forms of child abuse to protect the child who is being abused. The second limit to confidentiality is if you were to say that you were thinking of harming yourself or someone else, again, your therapist is required by law to step in and intervene to stop you from harming someone else, harming yourself. The third limit to confidentiality is, again, reports of elder or dependent adult abuse. So if you were to report that, someone above the age of 65 is being abused physically, financially, the therapist is again to legally required to report this and to intervene and protect that senior or dependent adult. A dependent adult is someone who is most likely conserved and unable to make decisions for themselves. And if they are being abused, then the therapist is also required to make a report. Um, when it comes to things like subpoenas, a therapist will let you know that they've received a subpoena and speak with you about the process of the therapist having to attend court, what that would look like, how much that would cost. Therapists usually do charge a fee for having to go to court or releasing records, but then the therapist will let you know before that happens. That will not just happen. If you need the therapist to release a record, you let the therapist know. The therapist will likely have you sign a form, and then those records will be released. So those are just a few things to know before you begin therapy.